Hi folks, it's me, Michaela, and welcome back to my channel. Today, where did I put my iPad? Got it. Seymour, things are already going badly. I haven't even begun the video. Today, we are doing my July reading wrap up. It is currently August 1st, so I'm actually filming this in a very timely fashion for once this month. And I'm going to be talking to you about the books I read in July. July was a good reading month. I had a good time picking things back up. I feel like June kind of was like a bit slow, a little bit of a drag, but this was a good month. So as always, I have my iPad here. Let's talk about some of my monthly stats before I get into each of the books. In the month of July, I read a total of 5 books. I know, it's just like, my reading is just so impressive how many books I managed to read. I'm really a very average reader. I had, let's see, so 4 of them were new to me. 1 of them was a reread, and then 4 of them were physical reads of books I owned, and 1 of them was a loan digitally through Libby. I read 3 romances this month and 2 literary/general fiction books. I read a total of 1,844 pages in the month of July, which averages to about 369 pages per book and an average of 59 pages read per day. And I had a average rating of 4.3, so really quite high. But whenever I have rereads, it's usually quite high, because if I'm rereading a book, it's usually because it was like minimum 4-star, right? Like, you're not out here rereading 3-star books on the regular. I don't have the time for that. Like I said, good reading month. Let's talk about the books. I have them here in a lovely little pile. Let's discuss. So the first book I read was Collide by Bal Khabra. I ended up giving this a 3.5. I was really liking it. I was having a lot of fun. And then about 100 pages left into this book, I just like hit a wall. It felt like the pace slowed down so much, and that like the book should be over already. And it was really weird to not want to pick up a book that I was having a good time with. It's just that for whatever reason in my brain, I was like, this should be over now. Like, I've been enjoying it, but I'm done enjoying it. And like, why is the book not over? I felt like it didn't conclude super quickly, and it also felt like the characters, like, they should be concluding, and then there like was another thing, and then there's another thing. It kind of reminded me a little bit of how I feel about Becca Mack books, where like it just needs to be edited down a little bit more, condensed a little bit more, so that you just keep having fun instead of thinking, how long is this book? This book is like 400 pages, and I think the sweet spot for a romance is 300 to 350, so this was a tad on the longer side, but I like both of the characters and I had a fun time reading it. I like a college hockey romance book. Hello, I'm reading the Off-Campus series by Elle, and that's what that whole series is. Also, this is a series. Didn't realize it was a series when I picked it up. Thought it was a standalone book. It is not. So now I've accidentally started another series. Yeah, like, I'm not mad about it, but I just like, I didn't know that going in. I didn't know I was starting a new series. I thought I was just reading a book. And now my series spreadsheet is like giving me side eye, which is like highly aggressive, but okay. I then did a reread of my favorite book, A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. I adore this book. I made a reading vlog for this where I annotated it for the first time, highlighting my favorite parts. I never usually highlight and annotate books, but I wanted to, and I thought I would vlog the process, and I had such a good time. I did so many highlights, and like 80% of them were about the cat. I will forever love this book. It's definitely not for everybody. I know that if you can't get behind a grumpy old man character who sometimes isn't very likable, you're not going to have a good time with this book. But reading this book and Ove and the community that builds around him. It's just like, and I sobbed at the end of this book. I sob every time. So if you do read it, like, prepare to cry, because the first time I read this, my mom was like, oh, it's not that sad. And then I was like sobbing on my birthday. I finished this book the first time on my birthday, and I was sobbing, and I was like looking at my mother, and I was like, I thought you said this wasn't sad. And she was like, it's not that sad. And then I was concerned that my mother doesn't have feelings. So yeah, loved it. 5 stars the second time round. If a book is making me cry, like, it's 5 stars. Unless it's making me cry because it's so bad, but I haven't had that experience, so cannot tell for sure if that would be the case. I then read The Score by Elle Kennedy. This is the 3rd book in her off-campus series. I have been reading this series. I'm hoping to finish this series by the end of the year. I believe there's one more full book, and then I know there's like a 5th book, but I think like it's called like The Legacy or something, and based off of the cover, it seems like it's like a continuation, like epilogue, kind of maybe a novella. I don't know how long it is, but if you know anything about that, is that like part of the series, or is it a like, if you just really like the series, also read this kind of business? Because I might just read the main books in the series and then call it a done deal in reading the series. I don't know if I'm going to be reading that other one. If I do, maybe I'll read it like through Libby instead of buying it, because I'm not sure how much I'd want to reread that kind of book. I don't know. Anyway, I found that the backstories for both Allie and Dean, I really liked both characters. I found them both to be very like believable, and they worked well with the plot and the things they overcame in their relationship and all of that. It made sense. I did find in The Deal, the first book in this series, that the characters seemed to have these like really traumatic backstories that would just like jump out from the plot. Like, it felt like it was funny, ha ha ha, and then it would hit you with this like serious trauma kind of thing, and it didn't really feel integrated with the rest of the romance plot. However, their backstories did, and I'm not going to say like their backstories are, well, I'm not going to compare traumas either, but you know, it's like the complicated history of them as people felt real and integrated into the plot, instead of just being like, well, here's a big thing that happened to them in their past that gives them depth. Why does that word just, I feel like I'm saying it wrong. Am I just like depth? What, my mouth just feels wrong. So anyway, I'm moving on from this book and that word. So I gave it a 4. It just didn't have like a 5-star feeling, but I did really like it. Actually, I'm lying. I gave this a 4.5. I thought I gave it a 4. This was a 4.5. I did really like it. I really enjoyed it. I read it super quick. I just didn't quite get 5-star feels from it, so it wasn't a 5-star book. Then this one I did actually give a 4-star, and that was A Photo Finish by Elsie Silver. This is the 2nd book in her Gold Rush Ranch series, which I'm also reading and hoping to finish by the end of the year. We'll see how all of these goals go for me. It seems like I'm being very ambitious. But when am I not being ambitious and then not achieving my goals with my reading? Like, that's just part of my personality at this point. I really like Elsie Silver's writing. I liked our characters. It's kind of fun knowing Violet a little bit in the context of having read a few Chestnut Springs books, which is all of her brothers, but you know, now getting Violet's story. Again, I thought that the backstories of the characters were very well integrated into the plot. My main thing was that sometimes I just like wasn't feeling the spark between Violet and Cole. Yeah, like the spark just didn't always feel there between Violet and Cole. You know, you'd be reading a scene where I could tell that, you know, there is tension, but I wasn't feeling the tension. So I still was like liking the story. It's just for whatever reason, sometimes I was feeling it, but in other scenes I wasn't, and it just like wasn't translating well for me, and it felt a little weird to like know that you should be feeling something from a scene you're reading, but then not feeling it. It was just like an odd experience. So I gave it a 4 stars because again, I did really like it. This one actually, it's quite short, and I felt that it worked. Like, it covered all of the ground, and you got there and you read it quickly, you're happy at the end. You know, you can't really ask for much more. I feel like there's a lot of character development in here, and it was great to read. I definitely wanted to finish reading Gold Rush Ranch. I'm buying the new cover, so unfortunately I'm gonna have to wait until I think November to read the next one, because that's when the new cover releases. For the time being, I've read this. Maybe I'll reread them before the end of the year. I'll reread Off to the Races and A Photo Finish before reading. What's the next one? Something about starting. They're all horse race related. You know what? If I just looked, it probably would tell me what the other books are called. The Front Runner. That's the next book. The next book is The Front Runner. So I will be reading that then once I get my hands on it. So then the last book that I read, I actually just finished today, but I'm counting it in my July reads because I only read like the last 30 pages today. The rest of the book I read in July, so it's in the July reading wrap up. That's how I do it. It's like if I finish most of the book in the month, it's part of the month. You know, if you finish it on the first day of the next month, it's part of last month. You get me? You get me. And that book was Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. I finally picked up another one of the books on my 24 books in 2024 list. I know, I'm doing so great with that. And by great, I mean not that great, because I don't even think I've read half of the books on the 24 books in 2024 list I made. I don't think I've even read half of them, and it's over halfway through the year. So that's kind of a problem, but we'll see. I actually did go on Libby and place a hold on a bunch of them that slowly they'll start coming in. It'll remind me that I'm not doing the things I said I will, and it'll pressure me into reading them, hopefully, instead of just putting them off and reading more romances that I keep buying because I have no self-control. But again, I've put myself on a book ban other than buying books in series that I'm currently reading that I already own books in. Gold Rush Ranch, Off Campus, my Richard Osman, Chestnut Springs, those series. Veronica Speedwell, if I ever get back to Veronica Speedwell. I don't know why I haven't been reading more Veronica Speedwell. I say how much I love it, and then I don't buy the next books and read them. What's wrong with me? I don't know. Anyway, Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. Let's get back to that. I gave this book 4.5 stars. And I tell you, Sally Rooney books, I think there's definitely not for everybody. You have to be really into character-driven stories, because I've read Normal People and now I've read Conversations with Friends. Both of them are so character-driven, and they're stories about characters and relationships, and they're not stories about plots. There is a plot, don't get me wrong, there's a plot, there's a thing that's happening. You're following Frances and Bobby, who are two young women in college, as they kind of they meet this older married couple. By older, I mean they're in their 30s, and they're in their early 20s. They're 21. So they meet this couple, and they end up becoming friends and having relationships and all this. And it's just about the relationships and the conversations and the character growth. You know, it's kind of coming of age. It's kind of a love story. There's it's a lot. But also, again, there's not a huge plot because it's so character driven. So if you don't like character based stories, you're probably not going to like this. You're probably going to read it and be nothing is happening. What is going on in this book? Why do people like it? However, I personally love a book every now and then that's just no plot, all vibes, and that's what I would say this book is. And so I really enjoyed it. I, again, didn't quite get 5-star feeling, so I gave it a 4.5. It just wasn't quite there. I think I like Normal People a bit more than Conversations with Friends, because I gave Normal People 5 stars, I believe, if I remember correctly. But again, really good book. Love Sally Rooney's writing. I think especially in this, the whole book is told from the perspective of Frances in first person, and Frances is a poet, and the text and the prose is so poetic and so beautiful that it just you really feel the character, because that is how Frances would talk, it just makes sense. And so I really loved it. I will keep reading Sally Rooney. I don't know how many other books she has. She does have one more. I can't remember the name of it. It's that one that has a light blue cover. Something about, I think there's the word beautiful in the title. I'll find it and put it here. This book, I know that one exists. Probably will read that at some point, but I think this one might be one was a bit more not as loved even by Sally Rooney friends. I feel like it's a little different maybe than the Normal People in Conversation with Friends. I don't know. I'll find out when I read it, but I'll read that eventually. Probably not even this year, because again, I have so many books still left to read that I want to get to before the end of this year. But for the time being, that was how I finished my month of July. Great reading month. month. Loved it and really loved all of the books I read. Now, of course, rereading my favorite book and reading another book from one of my favorite authors, and then reading a Sally Rooney, which I also knew I was going to love. You know, like I set myself up to win, but I think that's what you need to do in a month. Why am I going to waste my time reading books that I think I might not like? I like to read things that are a guaranteed done deal, I'm going to like it. And then if I don't like it as much as I think I'm going to, you know, you win, you lose. But that's how I run things. So in August, I have no idea if I'm going to read a lot or if I'm going to not read much at all. I'm going to be going on vacation for 2 weeks of it. So I might have a lot of time on my hands. I also might have like no time on my hands because I'm also going to be spending the vacation with family. So we'll see how much reading I get done in August and how much fun I have. I do have plans for one vlog. I also have plans for a pretty big video that I've started. I'm taking notes and like it's going to be very similar to my solving a murder mystery video. If you've seen that, it's going to be kind of the same vibe as that, and I'm super excited for it. But that is for another day. So for now, if you like this video, make sure to give it a like, give it a little thumbs up. If you happen to like me, consider subscribing. I'd be happy to have you. Do comment down below your thoughts on any of the books I've read this month. What books have you read this month? Do let me know what your favorites are. And with that, I hope you're having a wonderful day today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.